With all due respect to his honor, which is very little, his ruling is a joke. We both know the jury sees right through him.
The air inside the Providence Municipal Court felt unusually heavy that morning. A strange blend of tension, curiosity, and the quiet anticipation that always preceded Judge Frank Caprio's arrival. People packed the benches shoulder to shoulder, some clutching paperwork, others whispering about fines, bad parking luck, and the miracle stories they'd seen online. But no one in that room, not the officers, not the clerk, not the elderly couple waiting nervously in the front row, expected the moment that would soon unfold. The hum of murmurs tapered off the instant Judge Caprio stepped through the side door, his familiar warm smile easing the room's nerves. Yet beneath the calm routine of case numbers and citations lingered the unpredictable truth. Caprio's courtroom was never just about tickets. It was about people, real, flawed, hopeful people. And today, one man was about to test the limits of what that courtroom had ever witnessed. His name was Lucas Donnelly, a 29-year-old construction worker with broad shoulders, dirt-caked boots, and the kind of stubborn confidence that announces itself long before a word is spoken. He approached the podium with the swagger of someone who had already rehearsed his victory speech. The bailiff could practically feel the shift in energy as Lucas leaned forward on the stand, arms crossed, chin up, as though he wasn't facing a judge at all but a referee in a game he intended to win. Judge Caprio glanced at the citation on his desk, an expired meter, 3 unpaid parking fines, and 1 violation for blocking a driveway. On paper, it wasn't much. But from the spark in Lucas's eyes, trouble was clearly brewing. "Mr. Donnelly," Judge Caprio began with his usual gentle tone, "you have a few fines here we need to take care of. Let's see what happened." Lucas didn't wait for the question to finish. With a cocky smirk that rippled through the room like a shockwave, he said, loudly enough for the back row to hear, "You know what, Judge? The law doesn't matter to people like me. You only enforce it on the poor." A collective gasp broke through the courtroom, sharp, startled, disbelieving. Even the clerk's pen froze midair. Judge Caprio slowly lifted his eyes, locking onto Lucas with a look no one in that room had ever seen before. Not anger, not amusement, but a chilling stillness. The kind of silence that carries weight. The kind that warns. For 12 seconds, 12 long, breathless seconds, the entire courtroom stood suspended in time. Mothers held their children closer. The bailiff shifted subtly forward, ready for whatever might come next, and Lucas's smug expression faltered for the first time. Caprio set his glasses down with deliberate calm. "Mr. Donnelly," he said quietly, "you've just made a very bold remark." A faint tremor fluttered through the room. Lucas's bravado cracked ever so slightly, but his chin remained up. "I'm just saying the truth," he muttered, though the confidence in his voice wavered. Judge Caprio's voice remained soft, but every syllable sliced through the quiet like a razor. "You believe the law is a tool used only against the poor?" he asked. Lucas shrugged. "That's how it feels. Rich people get away with everything. People like me get fined because we can't fight it." Caprio leaned back, fingers intertwined, assessing the young man with an expression that suggested he wasn't just evaluating a legal violation. He was evaluating a heart, a worldview, a life shaped by frustration. And in that heavy silence, something changed in the room. People weren't just waiting for a verdict, they were waiting for a lesson. But before any of that could unfold, Caprio did something unexpected. He smiled. Not the warm, charming smile people recognized from viral videos. This was smaller, fainter, but unmistakably knowing. It was the smile of a man who understood more about struggle, perception, and human contradiction than any person in that courtroom realized. And it was the smile that preceded the words no one would forget. "Since you believe the law is only for the poor," he said, leaning in, "then I hope you understand exactly what you've placed yourself under today." The room held its breath again. Even Lucas's bravado crumbled for a moment as he swallowed hard, unsure whether the judge's words were a warning or something far deeper. The quiet after Judge Caprio's statement stretched long enough for everyone to feel it in their bones. Lucas Donnelly, who moments earlier strutted into the courtroom with the swagger of a man untouchable, now stood still, almost frozen, as if the weight of every eye in the room settled onto his shoulders. Even the fluorescent lights seemed dimmer, the ceiling fan slower, the shuffle of papers muted under the pressure of Caprio's calm but devastating words. The judge didn't raise his voice, didn't slam his gavel, didn't utter a single threat. He didn't need to. His silence alone shifted the atmosphere into something electric, something transformative. Lucas blinked, a twitch of uncertainty betraying him. His bravado, once puffed up like a shield, looked suddenly flimsy. He tugged at the edge of his jacket, trying to anchor himself. "Look, Judge," he muttered, attempting to recover. "I'm not trying to disrespect you. I'm just tired of feeling like no one listens. You get a ticket, you pay. You're late one time to work, you get fired. People like me, we don't get breaks." The courtroom murmured. Some nodded softly, others frowned, and a few stared at Lucas with a mix of sympathy and disapproval. It wasn't the first time Caprio had heard such frustration, far from it. But rarely did someone throw it at the court like a grenade. And rarely did such an admission come layered beneath defiance. Caprio rested his hands on the bench and tilted his head, studying Lucas as though trying to peer past the sharp edges of his tone to the story beneath. "Mr. Donnelly," he began, "I've been sitting in this chair a long time. I've seen hardship in many forms, and I've seen good people make mistakes, sometimes because they're overwhelmed, sometimes because they feel invisible, and sometimes because they believe the system isn't built for them." He paused, letting the words settle. "But what I cannot allow is the belief that this courtroom is an enemy of the poor. That is not justice." Lucas looked down, his jaw tightening. His fingers flexed nervously on the podium. Something in him wanted to lash out, to argue, to protect the pride that kept him standing upright. But another part, quieter, more human, told him to stop and listen. Judge Caprio continued, "Tell me something, Mr. Donnelly. What happened that made you feel this way? Your fines didn't come out of nowhere, and your anger isn't about a meter, so start from the beginning." The room shifted from a courtroom to something closer to a confessional. Lucas inhaled deeply, then let the breath out slowly, as though releasing weeks, maybe months of bottled pressure. For the first time, his voice cracked not with arrogance but exhaustion. "I work construction, Judge, long hours, sometimes nights, sometimes back-to-back shifts when we're behind on projects. My mom's sick, diabetes, kidney problems. I pay for her meds, I pay the rent, I pay the bills. Some days I barely sleep. And when I parked wrong last month, it wasn't because I didn't care. It was because I came straight from a job where we were pouring cement for 16 hours. I passed out in the truck, didn't even hear the meter run out." The courtroom was silent again, but this time the silence was different, tender, listening, heavy not with judgment but with understanding. Lucas swallowed, forcing himself to continue. "Then the next week the truck wouldn't start. I had to borrow my cousin's car, parked in front of a house without seeing the driveway. I wasn't trying to block anyone, I swear I was, and the fines, they stacked up. Every time I thought I'd finally get ahead, something else hit me. And I got tired of feeling like I'm drowning and everyone expects me to smile." Caprio's face softened, not pity, never pity, but empathy. The kind of empathy built from years of listening to stories like this, from growing up in a working-class family, from knowing what it means to choose between a bill and a meal. He leaned forward. "Mr. Donnelly, you're not the first person to stand at that podium carrying the weight of the world on their back, and you won't be the last. Life can be painfully unfair, but justice," he tapped the bench gently, "justice must be fair. Even when life is not." Lucas lifted his eyes, and for the first time there was no challenge in them, just a raw vulnerability he had fought hard to hide. Caprio continued, "You said the law only applies to the poor, but let me show you what fairness looks like in this courtroom. I'm going to ask you a few questions, and I want you to answer honestly, not defensively, not angrily, just honestly." Lucas nodded. "How many hours did you work the week you received your first ticket?" "About 90, Lucas whispered. "And when you fell asleep in your truck, were you choosing to ignore the rules, or were you a man simply at the end of his strength?" Lucas's voice broke. "I was tired, Judge, really tired." Caprio nodded slowly. "And this anger you came in with, this belief that the system is against you, does it come from injustice or exhaustion?" Lucas's lip trembled. "Both." A ripple passed through the courtroom, a collective exhale of people recognizing themselves in his answer. Judge Caprio let the silence breathe again. Then he said, "Mr. Donnelly, let me tell you something. You made a bold remark today, one that could have gotten you into serious trouble. But instead of punishing you for it, I'm choosing to hear the pain behind it." Lucas's eyes glistened, though he blinked rapidly to hide it. "Now," Caprio said, "I have a decision to make, not just about your fines, but about what kind of justice this courtroom stands for. And I want you to stand there and listen closely, because this decision isn't just about money. It's about accountability and grace." The room leaned in. The moment felt big, larger than the citations, larger than the rules, larger even than the courtroom itself. It felt like a human reckoning, one the entire room was invited to witness. Judge Caprio adjusted his glasses and took a slow breath, the kind that signaled not impatience but intentionality. Every eye in the courtroom followed the motion, waiting for the verdict, not just about Lucas's fines, but about the emotional storm that had just passed through the room. It wasn't every day that a single sentence from a frustrated man froze an entire courtroom. And it wasn't every day that such a moment transformed into something deeper, more human than the law usually allows. The judge sat back, his expression unreadable for a long, stretching moment that made Lucas shift uncomfortably, hands still gripping the edges of the podium. Then, with a calm that settled like a blanket across the room, Caprio spoke. "Mr. Donnelly," he began, tone firm yet undeniably warm, "you've had a hard year, a hard life from the sound of it. You're tired, overwhelmed, and carrying responsibilities most people never see. But none of that changes one fact: you broke the rules." He held up a small stack of papers, the tickets, the fines, the violations. "These aren't imaginary, they happened. And as you said yourself, everyone has problems, everyone feels pressure. But what makes a community work is that we still take responsibility for our actions, even when life is pounding us into the ground." Lucas lowered his eyes, not in shame, more like acceptance, a man finally understanding a truth he had been too angry to see. "But," Caprio continued, lifting a finger, "there's a second truth here. A truth the law rarely acknowledges, but humanity always should. Sometimes good people make mistakes because life has left them exhausted, not careless. Broken, not reckless. Human, not criminal." A soft hum of agreement rippled through the spectators. "So here's what I'm going to do," Caprio said, straightening. "You owe 3 unpaid parking fines and a violation for blocking a driveway. Altogether, that should cost you several $100s. Money you don't have. Money that would make your life worse, not better. And justice, real justice, should never make an already impossible life more impossible." Lucas blinked several times, confusion crossing his face. "So, what does that mean, Judge?" Caprio smiled faintly. "I'm going to dismiss the driveway violation entirely. That takes away the biggest chunk. As for the expired meter and the remaining fines," he tapped the papers gently, "I'm suspending them, every one. You'll owe nothing today." A collective gasp swept through the courtroom. A woman in the back whispered, "God bless him," while another man muttered, "That's Caprio for you." But Lucas didn't react, not at first. His jaw hung open slightly, eyes wide, body frozen, not from arrogance anymore, but from sheer disbelief. Are you serious?" he finally whispered, voice small, cracked, almost childlike in its vulnerability. Caprio nodded. "I am, but I'm not doing this because you yelled. I'm not doing it because you challenged the system. I'm doing it because I listened. Because underneath that anger is a man who's trying, truly trying, to stay afloat." For a moment, Lucas didn't move. Then his shoulders trembled, not from fear, not from guilt, but from relief so powerful it nearly buckled his knees. He swallowed, tried to speak, failed, then managed. I don't know what to say. Thank you. I never expected." Caprio lifted a hand gently. "Before you thank me, there's something I need from you." Lucas straightened, eyes focused. "I need you to do 2 things. First, take care of your mother. She depends on you, and that is a responsibility that matters far more than a fine. Second, take better care of yourself. Exhaustion leads to mistakes, and mistakes lead to situations like this. You can't keep sprinting through life until something breaks, not your truck, not your body, not your spirit." Lucas nodded slowly, absorbing every word. "I will, Judge, I promise." "And one more thing," Caprio added with a faint grin. "Maybe don't start your next courtroom appearance by accusing the entire justice system of being biased. It tends to stir the room." A ripple of laughter filled the courtroom, warm, genuine, easing the tension that had weighed down the air. Even Lucas cracked a sheepish smile. "Yeah," he said softly, "I guess that wasn't the smartest move." Caprio leaned back, satisfied. "Court is about law, Mr. Donnelly, but it's also about lessons. Today you learned one, and so did everyone here." He turned to the clerk. "Dismiss all charges." The gavel came down with a soft, decisive tap. As Lucas stepped away from the podium, the people lining the benches parted slightly, watching him with a mixture of admiration and empathy. A few even nodded as he passed, silent gestures of solidarity, respect, and recognition of the emotional battle he had just waged. He wasn't the swaggering, defiant man who had walked in. Something had shifted. Something had softened. He left not just free of fines, but free of a weight he'd been dragging for far too long. Judge Caprio glanced toward the next case file but paused, eyes drifting briefly toward the door Lucas had exited through. He exhaled quietly, the kind of breath that carried both the heaviness of the world and the hope he still held for it. Because in his courtroom, justice wasn't about punishment. It was about people, healing, humanity. And on that day, in that packed room where time had frozen after one man's bold, reckless remark, something extraordinary happened. Anger transformed into understanding, frustration turned into connection, and judgment gave way to compassion. Another case closed, another life lifted, another reminder that behind every citation lies a story worth hearing.